and all other scars of war, whether those scars are visible or hidden. Find out how to help, because for warriors, the greatest casualty is being forgotten. Please visit woundedwarriorproject.org.
Windshields are all about safety, and so is Autoglass America, especially now during the COVID-19 pandemic and social distancing. If your windshield is chipped or cracked and you have qualifying insurance, we'll install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. As always, we'll come to you with free mobile service while maintaining social distancing, plus you'll get up to $150 cash back for your windshield. Keep your family safe. Call us today, 813-96-GLASS. That's 813-96-GLASS.
New guidelines show it's relatively safe for women with epilepsy to become pregnant, but caution must be taken. The guidelines from the American Academy of Neurology and American Epilepsy Society recommend that women with epilepsy avoid taking the seizure drug valproate during pregnancy, since the drug can cause birth defects. Overall, though, these guidelines should be very reassuring, since they show epilepsy does not substantially increase a woman's risk of having a cesarean section or premature labor. For more information on these guidelines, visit thebrainmatters.org.
From the heart of Central Florida, you are listening to the most electrifying show in media. My Neighbor's Choice. And welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornoski. So glad to be with you once again here across Central Florida, where we're here to dissect the news, to understand current events, and to be guided by the truth and nothing but. That's our pursuit. We want to know why it is that so many things that we've allegedly declared war on, for example, Nixon, he declared war on cancer in the 1960s. We're still fighting that war, and in some ways haven't gotten much far since that time. Whenever we rely on big top-down solutions, whenever we rely on bureaucrats with no skin in the game for their failures, we're bound to always fall into the same old mistakes. And so our program, since its inception, has always been focused on health. It's always been focused on immune system building. It's always been focused on the concept of let food be thy medicine. And now that everybody's talking about stuff like this, we're just doing the same thing we've always done, but we're doing it in a way that nobody else does in the mainstream broadcast media. So I'm happy to be with you here in Tampa Bay and St. Petersburg and Sarasota, as well as in Orlando and around the world. And joining me now is a friend of mine. He's a medical doctor and someone, they call him the Carnivore Doctor, Carnivore MD, Paul Saladino. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you again, and you're joining us from California. And I wanted to kind of dive into some of the things that you've been seeing. You know, we last spoke a few weeks ago before this whole, pandemic thing really took off even stronger, in terms of the social ramifications. But here we are now. And I know that you have been steady in your message, saying that the steps that we're taking actually could be more harmful than good when it comes to keeping people cloistered up in houses without sunshine, fresh air, and proper nutrition.
Yeah, I think that it's always important to examine what we think of as the status quo. We've all been told right now that social distancing and quarantine are going to save us. But a couple of things that I've been trying to gather attention toward or direct attention toward in my social media recently are some of the downsides to what's happening right now. The fact that so many of us are stuck in our homes, we're not able to go to gyms, we're isolated, maybe lonely, we haven't seen friends. And if you look at the New York Times is reporting that processed food consumption is soaring right now. So who's laughing right now? The processed food companies, because people are eating junk food and watching Netflix right now. So it's a little bit of a complex issue to disentangle, but I think we can try and look at it today on the program for a little bit and think about what are some of the downsides of this current quarantine? What are some of the things we should be aware of, especially as many of the discussions now begin to turn toward the end of the quarantine. I've seen multiple governors across the West Coast and even some East Coast legislative bodies and state legislatures beginning to think about, how does this quarantine end? What comes next? And I think that the thing that I fear most is that people will come out of the quarantine less healthy and more susceptible to illness than they went in. And we need to remember that coronavirus isn't going anywhere. We can talk about all these things. Just because we've been in quarantine for the last 4 weeks doesn't mean coronavirus has disappeared. It's still out there. And most of the models predict that once quarantine ends, we're going to see another surge with this virus. And most of us, hopefully not you or I or many of your listeners, but many people we know will be less able to fight it off. They'll be less healthy. So it's quite a bugaboo we're in.
Yeah, I've seen a interview with Dr. Witowski. He's a retired longtime epidemiologist from Rockefeller University, and he was saying that in his professional experience with over 30 years in that field, he says what we're doing to flatten the curve may end up creating more deaths for the elderly for the coronavirus than for the coronavirus itself, not to mention all the other potential side effects of doing such extreme isolation techniques. What do you think of that?
I think that's a great point. And I watched the same video from Newt Witkowski. Yeah, he's a tenured, longtime epidemiologist with over 35 years looking at this type of modeling of respiratory diseases. And he brings up some very, very good points, which are that respiratory diseases don't go away. They'll go away once we have herd immunity, once the majority of the population has been exposed. Well, if you want the majority of your population to be exposed, who do you want to be exposed? The young and the healthy, the people who can actually fight it off. There have been so many media reports coming out about healthy people dying from coronavirus or having serious complications. And for me, this is almost entirely fear-mongering. I think it's a challenge to our medical system to wake up and redefine what health is. Just because someone doesn't have a massively obese body mass index or a known medical issue, I think that the majority, in fact, probably all of the people who have sadly suffered greatly but are considered to be, quote, healthy with coronavirus, have underlying illness that our medical system is not aware of because we're not good at looking at really characterizing what health is. I think that for healthy people, for truly healthy people, we will be able to fight this virus without a problem. But what defines true health? That's the real question. And I've talked about this on my podcast, which is called Fundamental Health. I talk about this in my recent book, The Carnivore Code. If you look at the statistics for the hospitals, one of the main risk factors for admission and severity of coronavirus course is obesity and insulin resistance. And most people understand obesity. You can see obesity. But for a lot of people, you can't see insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is a precursor for diabetes. And this, I think, is where Western medicine is missing the boat. I think so many of the people who have been considered to be, quote, healthy and suffered greatly with coronavirus probably have underlying insulin resistance or nutritional deficiency. So really, I think we're missing the boat with what we're doing here. We're trying to hide from coronavirus. We're thinking if we just shelter in our homes for weeks and weeks, it'll surely go away. But it's not a weather pattern. It's not a storm that's just raging. It's eventually going to stop. It's a virus. It's a viral particle that is circulating among humans and that will continue to circulate among humans. And that we really will not be able to fight effectively unless we have a vaccine, which is 12 to 18 months away or years away with questionable efficacy, or until those of us that are healthy enough are exposed and develop immunity. In some ways, you could make a very coherent argument that for those of us that are young and healthy, getting out, returning to normal life, being exposed to this respiratory virus, like all other respiratory viruses we've always been exposed to throughout the last decades of our life, is the best way to protect those in our lives who are most susceptible, who should remain sheltered. So the elderly, the immunocompromised, these people should probably remain in shelter and quarantine, remain protected, while those who are young and healthy develop herd immunity or develop some sort of an exposure to the virus. That's probably the best way to do it from an ecological, naturalistic perspective, and no one is talking about this. Everyone just believes we're going to keep hiding from this virus. And I think it's probably the wrong strategy.
And I think I had Dr. Ken Berry on yesterday, and he was talking about how people get so fixated on obesity, but a lot of folks who are thin or what have you, or athletic, have a lot of underlying health issues because of the massive amount of carbohydrates that they're consuming. And so that becomes a wrinkle in the way of analyzing this situation as to who is really strong and healthy to take this virus on and who is immune compromised,
It's a great nuance. Ken Berry's a great friend of mine, and I would agree with him that a lot of people may look like they have a healthy body composition, but also have underlying insulin resistance due to overconsumption of processed carbohydrates and sugars, and also processed vegetable oils. I think processed vegetable oils are probably some of the worst and most insidious problems for many humans, and they're not being talked about either. I think there's a lot of fear mongering in the media also about this virus, and nobody wants to die right now, and it's forcing us all to look at our mortality, and nobody wants their parents or their siblings or people they know in their lives that are maybe not as healthy as they are to suffer. But I also think that once this is all over and done with, and once we have more data, the fatality rate will be much lower than we are being told it is right now. I think that really once we look at this in a very academic and a very scientific way, we'll see that there are many more people who have been exposed to this virus than we are being led to believe right now. And the fatality rate will probably be below 0.5%. So yes, people will die from coronavirus, and this is tragic, but we all accept risk in our lives driving our cars. We all accept risk in our lives every year with the flu. Every year there are 40,000 people that die in car accidents. We accept that risk to live our lives. But right now we're sort of putting everything on hold and accepting that paralysis is the way to go. We're becoming essentially a deer in a headlight waiting for the virus to go away when it really won't. There are statistics now suggesting that social distancing has flattened the curve or has saved lives. But you can't make those claims. No one can make claims that social distancing has saved lives until many months after the pandemic is over. Because what will happen once we stop social distancing? We know that we can't do social distancing forever. We can delay the exposure, but eventually most scientists, myself included, most physicians believe that the majority of the population will be exposed to this virus. And the real question becomes, how will we face it when we are?
Let's continue with Dr. Paul Saladino. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. We'll be right back live.
Looking to enhance your workout at home social distancing? There's no better way to do that than with a post-workout supplement from Fortify. It's the new all-in-one pre- and post-workout supplement. Use the code RADIO to receive the 25% off discount. Fortify Fit, created and designed by board-certified Dr. Michael Lang. You know him as the radio host of Ask the Doctor. Get Fortify Fit with 2 delicious flavors, strawberry watermelon and fruit punch. Amazing results when using pre- and post-workouts. Fortify Fit, available at fortify.com. That's FORTIFEYE.com. Remember the EYE in Fortify. Dr. Michael Lang's Fortify Fit with 2 delicious flavors, keeping America fit and healthy during this time of precautionary change.
And now the fine folks at New Look Lawn Service Corps are reminding motorists to save the text message for when it's not going to cause an accident. So put down your cell phone and never text and drive. This safety tip is brought to you courtesy of New Look Lawn Service Corps, our #1 most trusted landscaping service. For sod installation or brush removal, they do it all. Call today for a free estimate at 877-468-7077. That's 877-468-7077. That's New Look Lawn Service Corps, reminding you to never text and drive.
The following message is sponsored by the Florida Department of Elder Affairs, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
Have you ever given your Social Security number to someone without knowing why they need it? Has your Medicare card been stolen? If you think you've been a victim of Medicare fraud, contact the SHINE Senior Medicare Patrol Program. They empower seniors to prevent Medicare fraud and can help if you've been a victim. To speak to a SHINE counselor, call 1-800-963-5337 or go to floridashine.org.
Marcus Scott Impact Realty Tampa Bay is on the air saluting the brave men and women of our U.S. military. This proud salute is brought to you by Marcus Scott Impact Realty Tampa Bay. Give them a call today at 724-219-1604. That's 724-219-1604. That's Marcus Scott Impact Realty Tampa Bay, proudly saluting our troops, veterans, and first responders, professionals, and people who care.
My part-time service in the Army National Guard makes it possible for me to be more for the community I call home. I'm a better neighbor because my service has taught me how important it is to be a team player. My training helps me in my classes when I give attention to detail to the task at hand. My service in the Army National Guard allows me to keep my country safe from threats. Learn more about how you too can live and serve part-time by visiting NationalGuard.com.
Sponsored by the Florida Army National Guard. Aired by the Florida Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski. We're live, coming to you coast to coast in Florida and around the world online. And we're challenging the sacred cows that we continue to hear pushed as if they're sacred dogma by the old, outdated, dying corporate media. It seems like they're so negative and so eaten up inside with confusion that they want to spread that to others around them. And we're here to cut through that noise and confusion. I'm here with Dr. Paul Saladino. He's known as the Carnivore MD because of his advocacy for a ketogenic, meat-oriented diet. That's nose to tail, eating all kinds of animal products that are humanely raised. And Paul, I see here on your Twitter, he says, "Welcome to the police state. For questioning the status quo have now been reported to both the Twitter police and the state medical board by a vegan physician." I mean, goodness, you came, and what were you being reported for? What'd you tell people, to get sunshine or something? Is that criminal?
I had a previous tweet earlier this week where I said that perhaps now was the time to think about how we move forward with regard to ending the quarantine, and we should consider herd immunity, and perhaps young and healthy people should be the ones who would first be exposed to the coronavirus to protect the elderly. And that there was a vegan physician on Twitter who was urging his followers to report me, and he reported me to the California State Medical Board, saying that I was encouraging people, that I was endangering lives.
Yeah, you need to look into an anthropologist named René Girard, who talks about how he was a Stanford professor and one of the members of the French Academy called the Immortals. And his theory, mimetic theory, talks about why humans do this. And it has to do with our need for scapegoats. We in times of crisis, particularly in the ancient times and plagues and things like that, humans anthropologically kind of evolved a way to deal with their tension, to try to bind themselves together by purging or demonizing or destroying or humiliating or shaming someone who violates the shared sacred dogmas that binds the community together. And that's what you see with what you're experiencing and others who dare to think for yourself. And that's the most important thing about America and Western civilization, is that we make space for people who think for themselves. And we have to fight like tooth and nail to protect that in this time when people get turned into their reptilian brain, where they get dumber and snarling and scared, and they get led by Pied Pipers to go scapegoat somebody.
I think you're absolutely right. And, you know, that's been my fight on Twitter. I actually then followed up with a separate tweet and said, you know, California Medical Board, I look forward to conversations with you about respiratory viruses and how herd immunity might save thousands of lives. I don't think the California Medical Board will actually do anything I don't think it's even an actionable offense. It's really just posturing on Twitter from this other vegan physician whose views are different than mine about what humans should be eating for optimal health. But I agree with you. I think that it's critical that we all maintain an independent thought process. And if any voice is silenced, then that voice is lost. And it's good to question the status quo. And right now, the status quo is that we should all be huddling in our homes and quarantined and never going outside, and that social distancing is saving us and saving lives. And yes, social distancing has slowed the progression of coronavirus. I'm not going to debate that. And we don't know that it has saved lives in the long term because social distancing must end. There were peaceful riots today in North Carolina from people asking the government to reopen the government, people wanting to get back to work because they felt that it was unconstitutional for them not to be able to work and it was impacting small businesses. What we know is that by stopping the economy, we are affecting more lives than just the people who are in the hospital. We are affecting thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives of people who have businesses. It's not a simple equation, and it's not money for lives. It's lives for lives. There are statistics from previous analyses that for every 1% of unemployment, there are 40,000 lives lost over the following 6 years. Mm-hmm. This coronavirus epidemic, what we chose to do with social distancing and the quarantine, raised our unemployment rates to 12, 13%. There are 10 million people unemployed right now, plus.
And every time I'm in the grocery store, I see people stocked up with tons of soda and Gatorade and frozen pizzas and junk food. And I'm thinking, these idiots, I'm sorry, but they really are. I mean, these people that do these press conferences telling the public what to think today about the virus, they never, ever mention, hey, guys, knock off the carbohydrate consumption.
Exactly.
And it's just disgusting to me because it's like moral hazard, right? Everybody believes, okay, you're my insurance, guys. Tell me what to think. You'll protect me. And they don't tell them a thing about, hey, guys, stop stocking up on soda. Stop stocking up on Frito chips. That's how you're going to get in the coronavirus hot seat there,
Exactly. There is not a single mainstream conversation about nutrition and its impact on your immune system or your health. And yet we know without a shadow of a doubt that there is a strong predisposition toward obesity and insulin resistance in those who are suffering most with coronavirus. It's a huge predisposition. 70 to 90% of those admitted to the ICU have one comorbidity or more, which means hypertension, diabetes, coronary artery disease, diseases like this. 70 to 90%. So that means that the majority of people who are getting coronavirus and are not getting into the ICU don't have those issues. The majority of people who contact coronavirus and are really, truly, deeply healthy will be just fine. But there's no conversation about that. All of our hopes and dreams are pinned on a vaccine, which is months to years away, will have questionable efficacy and could harm people, and on medications which won't work and have not been proven.
So in
the only fix is changing our nutrition, changing our lifestyle. That's the only way, and no one's talking about it.
So in some sense,
that's the kind of stuff I'm getting reported to the medical board for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading your book, The Carnivore Code, which I enjoy, and you were kind enough to send me a copy to look at, and I've been going slow at it and looking at different pieces at different times. But it seems to me that perhaps coronavirus is a scapegoat for the failure of single-payer nutrition science propped up by our government and big business. If you look at the fatality rates for cancer every year, 655,000 deaths. I think last year, diabetes, massive numbers. You add all those up, it's way bigger than anywhere close to, massively bigger than the deaths of this coronavirus right now. And in the ones who are dying of coronavirus have all those other diseases.
Exactly.
And every one of those diseases, according to what I'm learning, are caused by eating the recommended vegetable oils and carbohydrates and sugar, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's totally true. If you look at the deaths this year, far more people will die this year from diabetes and heart disease, insulin resistance. Far more will die this year from these things, even after we stop social distancing. And as I was saying before the break, we cannot claim that social distancing is a success until this is all over and many months after it stops, because the virus will continue to spread. we won't hide from this virus. Most of us are going to be exposed, and the question is just how healthy we are going to be when we need it. And, with that in mind, what I was suggesting on Twitter was that, look, herd immunity is the only way that respiratory viruses are controlled. This is what has always happened throughout our human evolution. The majority of the population will be exposed. Herd immunity will happen whether we wanted to or not. And we can do it in a controlled, intelligent fashion by having those who are healthy and young be exposed to the virus first, or we can just do it as a free-for-all and stop quarantine, and everyone goes out, and then a lot of older people, a lot of people who are more immunocompromised will die from the virus, where they could have been protected with an intelligent herd immunity strategy. So that's the things I'm getting reported for.
Paul, we're going to have you on again sometime. I know you got to run right now. I want to ask you just to give me your quick take. There's a lot of people talking about the need to take massive amounts of vitamin C as a prophylactic or a preventative of this type of situation. But I know that you and others and myself, we tend to say, maybe vitamin A and vitamin D are better for immune system building. What would you say on that debate, vitamin C versus vitamin A and D for immune system building? I know there's the whole issue of you got to stop eating the carbs and sugar too, and vegetable oils, but.
Yeah, I did a podcast about this a few weeks ago. People can find it on my podcast, which is Fundamental Health. There are so many nutrients that are critical for a robust immune system: vitamin A, C, D, E, zinc, selenium, copper, B12, riboflavin, B6. No one's talking about any of this. Megadosing of vitamin C is not going to save you. Having an adequate amount of vitamin C is important, just like having an adequate amount of vitamin D and E. But megadosing of any vitamin is not going to give you a supernatural immune system. Being in the sun, exercising, sleeping well, having a nutrient-rich diet, which I believe is animal-based, is the way to create a robust immune system, which you should have every day of your life, not just when there's a pandemic with a virus.
Well, Paul Saladino, thanks for coming on. I want people to go to your website, carnivoremd.com, and check out your podcast, Fundamental Health. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks for having me on.
We'll continue live on A Neighbor's Choice, folks. And I know this is different than what you hear on the fake news media, but you're going to have to continue to join us in our mission as we change the conversation one person at a time, one neighbor at a time, starting with you. We'll be right back.
Guys, the physicians and staff at Center for Men's Health want you to know that C4MH.com is open and will remain open throughout this whole ordeal. C4MH.com has taken a multitude of steps to make sure that their offices are the safest places that they can possibly be. And here are just a few of the items that make that statement a fact. C4MH.com treats all offices with Microban 24. Now, that's the most advanced antivirus disinfectant available today. And unlike any other disinfectant, Microban 24 kills viruses for 24 hours after application, touch after touch. The staff wears level 1 procedure mask, and you can have one too. They also monitor their temperatures, and soon they'll do the same for you when you walk in the door. All their pens and clipboards are antimicrobial, and when you walk in, you will use hand sanitizer. C4MH.com prepared for this early so that both their staff and patients remain safe. Safe is the way it's always been at C4MH. I'm a patient at C4MH.com, and I know safety is their first concern.
So you've decided to jump into the world of media with a podcast. How's that working? Hopefully well. But if you're only seeing a handful of downloads, then it's time to air your podcast on radio to give it the reach it deserves. Thousands will hear it, not just a few. Call today to find out more how we can bring an audience to your podcast on this station. 813-250-3883. That's 813-250-3883. Or email to info@unitedcitiespro.com. That's info@unitedcitiespro.com.
This message is sponsored by the Florida A&M University Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
Where I'm from, marijuana is legal. Can I use it in Florida? Nah, it's illegal here. 20 grams or less is a misdemeanor, and more than 20 grams is a felony.
Well, I have epilepsy. Should I try to get a medical marijuana prescription?
Now that's legal, but talk to your doctor first to see if it's a qualifying condition and if medical marijuana is even right for you.
I will, thanks.
We are soaring high across Central Florida right now. Hello, Tampa, and Orlando, and everywhere through the I-4 corridor and beyond. Our national audience joins us. If you're watching online, make sure you share the video or subscribe if you're on YouTube or Facebook. Let folks know that the media revolution starts here. Weekdays, 4 to 6 Eastern Time, right here. And thank you for joining us if you're on WHBO, 1040 AM in Tampa. Take the time to set that dial to 1040 AM as your preset, because there's no other news program that talks about the things that we do. They give you 90% fluff and blame games, so we get to the meat of the matter. So we just heard from Dr. Paul Saladino, an MD in California, who is really a great voice for the revolution taking place in nutrition, that for so long we were lied to, we were misled. You can call it misled, you can call it lie, you can call it misinformed, whatever it was. The cronies that have made billions of dollars sickening our families with government nutritional science. I call it single-payer medical science, right? Single-payer nutrition. That's what got all of the folks that we know having conditions like diabetes and hypertension and cancer and all the horrible things that are the factors that lead to potential fatality when you get a virus. It's like adding the cherry on top to a whole, construct of different issues that you've got in your body. And why have people chosen that? Ultimately, human beings have to be responsible for their choices, right? But when think about it, when most humans are, going to grow up in an environment where the media as a sycophantic, worshiping relationship to the status quo bureaucracies of DC, and when they get that in their media exposure, constantly inundated with that kind of misinformation and pseudoscience quackery crap coming out of the old TV media and newspaper sources, who get massive amounts of investment from pharmaceutical companies and so on, and massive amounts of advertising and support from groups that make lots of money off of junk food and sugar and carbohydrates and vegetable oils. When you have that as your media environment, it can condition folks to get really caught up in a lot of groupthink that's simply completely wrong. That you need to eat massive amounts of carbohydrates. You need to eat margarine, not butter. I saw someone today in the store, trying to make sure they could find margarine instead of butter. And I thought, how awful is that? It was an elderly woman, and she was asking her daughter to pick out, please help me find the margarine, not the butter. And I thought, how disgusting, And you'd think that these people that spend hours every day telling us in their press conferences what they're doing to save us from this virus would spend even a minute maybe on nutrition and actually tell the truth. But they can't, right? Because their stupid food pyramid, that pseudoscience quackery nonsense that they push in your classes since you're a kid, when you're in school, elementary, middle school, high school, college. And then when you get out into the media, you're inundated with junk and junk science and garbage from the media that tells everybody, oh, the media, the government always has your best interest in mind. They're just totally, trusting, and you should just accept the bureaucracies. This is total laughable. This is nothing but religious superstition in which people worship and adore bureaucracies as if they're the gods that would tell everybody what to think and do. They want idols, okay? Human hearts are idol factories. They manufacture idols to be in awe of, to adore, to obey, to submit to, and they want other people to obey and submit to those idols too. So no matter what you hear from the little sophisticated folks in the dying newspaper media and TV media who tell you, I'm a sophisticated modern, I don't have religion. They are thoroughly religious. Their idols are the state. They worship the state. They worship government. They worship the cool crowd, or what they think is the cool crowd. They want to be liked. They want to fit in. They want to stand out by fitting in more than anybody else. Isn't that the funny thing about it? And that's what we have to just patiently unpack the deception, unpack the stupidity, and guide people towards the truth in kindness, but firmness. We have to be firm because people's lives are at stake. People's lives are at stake. And when you have so many decades of conditioning, of false pseudoscience pushed by stupid boob tube television folks and outdated newspaper trash magazines, that they just get so tickled if somebody in Washington bureaucracy invites them to a cocktail dinner. Oh, they love it. They just want to be accepted. They just want to be a part of the cool kids. They just want to be in proximity to what they perceive to be power. But I accept the reality that says power is made perfect in weakness. I accept the reality that says that those who, don't heed the line from Lord Acton that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Everybody loves that line, but then they want to report their neighbors to police if they're not wearing a mask, or if they're out playing t-ball, or if they're out at a park, or if they're doing something. How stupid, And then they want to complain and whine and say, the TV tells me Russia's trying to destroy our democracy. Oh, wait a second. I got to call the police. I just saw my neighbor walk out with her dog past the curfew. How stupid. How dumb. This is not American. And we have to call it stupid because that's shameful behavior. It's disgusting. Trying to put a violent situation against your neighbor because they're walking a dog because there's some kind of theory that if you flatten the curve, that will actually cause, less deaths in the end. No one knows that. As our medical doctor friend Paul Saladino just says, yes, it has slowed perhaps in the short term the infection rate. Duh, right? You're literally trying to shut down most of the economy through brutal force of government. So yeah, you're going to shorten the immediate infectious rate, and that, I guess, helps the bureaucratically mismanaged, hospital system make up for, potential waves that could have hit. That's the idea. But in the long run, they actually, by flattening the curve, the only way you get rid of these viruses is herd immunity. You've got to get something like 80% of the population having been exposed to the virus. And the best way, a lot of folks who are in epidemiology say, is like Dr. Witowski from Rockefeller University and so on. They say you've got to get that number up, and it starts with the kids. But what's going to happen? When you say that, because people are so ruled by fear and emotions like children, because they've gone to public schools their whole life, and they go to, they listen to deceptive media that worships the state, because they have that, they're not able to say, wait a second, come on. All right, let me use some wisdom here. Let me use some common sense. Let me use some bravery. Let me use some courage. Why are we trusting politicians that the only thing they accomplished was they won popularity contests, which means they know how to manipulate, which means they know how to be sociopaths and narcissists and self-obsessed people who are concerned with image? I mean, the only job of a politician is to try to create and manage appearances. That's it. Their job is literally to do whatever they can to make you believe that they did the most and the best for you, and that they attacked and shamed and harmed those who you hate or those who you are jealous of in society. That's it. So their job is to mitigate risk of being blamed for problems and to try to take the credit for the things that they had nothing to do to accomplish. That's it. That's the only job of a politician. I know that you're told in school the myth that we need these politicians to do things, but that's what you would get when you ask government to educate you. They're going to tell you that, yes, dear child, our masters are there for your benefit. No, they're not. They're there for their own. And that's why Trump is scapegoated so much, because he makes all the same mistakes as most of these statists do, who want power of your life in their hands with the government. But the difference is he tells you that, he wears his self-absorption on his sleeve in an almost innocent and naive way. He wears his own self-centeredness on his sleeve, whereas people like Obama and Bush, they hid it with sophisticated, politically correct language that lulled you into this false reality that, oh my goodness, they really do care. And, maybe they do care in some twisted, shrunken way. I'm not going to read people's minds, but all I can do is go by the actions. And we know that politicians, all they do and all they care about is managing their image. Why would you trust that kind of persons, whatever their party is, in a time of crisis about, whoa, how's my health going to be? And how is my family going to be? And how are my kids going to be? And how do I avoid sicknesses? And how do I avoid this or that? But yet we have millions of people, God bless them, who have been so shrunken by the nonsense taught in government schools and government worshiping media their whole life, and they can't help it. They don't know what they're doing, that they feel the need to call police, who have the option of deadly force if necessary, on their neighbors for walking dogs. And meanwhile, we have a Tampa mayor, and that wants to push mandatory masks. You got to wear a mask, mandatory, right? Maybe you should wear a mask, but why are you going to put this kind of coercive viciousness, like you are God and you have full control over people's life, and you don't even know whether that is something that will actually do anything to reduce deaths in the long run? I'm sure the Tampa mayor won't tell you about proper nutrition. There's too many special interests that she'd irritate, right? But you're not told that part. And that's why we need honest media like A Neighbor's Choice to bring that to the table. Sunshine's important. Fresh air is important. Not being in fear of your neighbor. That's important. But here these people, they worship violence so much. Oh, I will use government to force you to wear a mask. How stupid do these people think we are, that we're going to roll over and let these little wannabe gods, these pitiful little narcissists with nothing going but just trying to keep up with the appearances. That's all they want. They just want to keep up with the appearances of being cool. But they're not. They're yesterday's news, and they're not going to touch our freedom. We'll continue live on A Neighbor's Choice. More to come.
Are you looking to really boost your business? I mean, really boost your business. If you were told that with a small investment of less than $3,000 per month, that you would receive tens of thousands of views of your ads, would you be interested? Well, get interested, because we have the formula that is working for many businesses, big and small. With the use of video, radio, and social media, targeted no-waste marketing is very successful. Contact us at UnitedCitiesProductions.com or web@radiogenesis.com. That's web@radiogenesis.com, or the old-fashioned way at 813-250-3883. That's 813-250-3883. Get in the marketing game that is effective in every way. UnitedCitiesProductions.com. That's UnitedCitiesProductions.com.
Windshields are all about safety, and so is Auto Glass America, especially now during the COVID-19 pandemic and social distancing. If your windshield is chipped or cracked and you have qualifying insurance, we'll install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. As always, we'll come to you with free mobile service while maintaining social distancing, plus you'll get up to $150
Medicare beneficiaries are having difficulty keeping up. The Florida Department of Elder Affairs SHINE program may be able to help. SHINE counselors can guide you to money-saving programs, including one that may help pay your Medicare Part D costs. For more information, call 1-800-963-5337 or go to floridashine.org.
And now, Robert D. Palomino is proudly saluting our troops and veterans. Visit USO.org to locate a military care package and see how you can make a difference today. Robert D. Palomino has been serving Tampa and the surrounding area with quality and pride for years. For the best when it comes to complete home remodeling, call the pros today, 813-695-4261. That's 813-695-4261. That's Robert D. Palomino. He's a professional who cares.
They say it should be impossible for bumblebees to fly because their wings are too small for their bodies. But bumblebees don't care. They just fly. Bright Expectations is dedicated to helping our Florida residents with special needs and unique abilities find the resources, support, and inspiration that they and their families need to break barriers and achieve their dreams. Visit www.brightexpectations.com to start your journey today.
This message is sponsored by the Florida Department of Health, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this radio station.
Our Neighbor's Choice is on the march for our freedom. That's what we do each and every day. We are inspired by beauty, by truth, by goodness, by freedom. That's our birthright, and it's ours as our human dignity deserves. And we have a media that, because of twisted things in their lives, they're shrunken from that. They don't see freedom as a beautiful thing. They're scared, they're angry, they're mad, they're power obsessed, they're jealous, they're lost and confused. They want gods, and they want us to worship their gods. So I would say the media is a PR firm for first and foremost, it's a PR firm for the special interest corporations that stand to make profit off of their misinformation and stupidity. They don't even know it's wrong half the time. They're just stuck. Like, why do you go outside of a lane if it's making the status quo friends around you happy, right? So that's the narrative that people get stuck on. I mean, we're all prone to this, right? They're not villains in the sense that something's especially bad about who they are. It's just that, again, actions speak louder than words, and we have a media that does nothing to tell you the truth about the importance of sunshine and fresh air and exercise and proper amount of sleep, 8 hours of sleep a day, getting proper sunshine, especially in the morning when the right rays are at their peak before the more harmful radiation comes out as it gets hotter in the day. They don't tell you about these things. They don't tell you about how, we've been misinformed, to say the least, with Ansel Keys and the single-payer nutrition science that the food pyramid represents, where they want us eating margarine instead of butter, where they want us eating tons and tons of carbohydrates and plant matter like a bunch of sheep or cows instead of eating the meat, the sheep or the cows, right? So we're going to cut through all that, and there's millions of people joining us every day. So this is not a lonesome fight. There are millions of folks who are saying, you know what, I'm tired of this stuff. I'm not going to sit around and be pushed around by a bunch of know-nothing bureaucrats that are narcissists. They've got the power because they're politically weasels, and they weasel around and get, up and up the pecking order of a bureaucracy, right? They don't have any skin in the game. If the FDA's wrong about drugs, do they get fired? Do they lose their job? Do they lose funding? No, they get more funding. If they get us doing drugs that cause massive amount of deaths and sicknesses and comorbidities, which makes us really prime targets for new viruses, do they get shamed by the media? No. Do they get cut in their budget? No. Do they lose their job? No. But guess what? You get to lose your job. You get to lose your life even. You get to lose your health. You get to lose your dignity because of their stupid mistakes. Now, who is with me in wanting to get these bureaucrats and their dumb groupthink out of our lives? They can have their lives, but they cannot use the force of government and their misinformation, myth-making machines and the fake news media to keep propagating us into the doldrums. They can eat soy all day long, but they're not going to force us to. They can stay in their house and to get no sunshine, but they're not going to force us to. They can stay cloistered up and not get fresh air and walk the dog and go run in the sunshine, but they're not going to force us by the force of government to be hiding in a cave for the rest of our lives. They will not push their fear agenda into our lives. Our lives are driven by happiness, joy, goodness, meekness. Against such things, there is no condemnation, and certainly not from a corrupt corporate media that's dying in front of our eyes. And thank goodness for that, because decentralism is the future. It's not central commands. It's not one newspaper and one TV organization and all the dumb, awful, deadly misinformation and pseudoscience and quackery that these fools keep pushing. We're done with that. And that's the best thing about these times that we live in, is that people are waking up more and more to the truth that the media and the government are not some kind of benevolent, just, happy, joyful, innocent little force. That when you give any human being, it's not, again, the individuals that are in it that make it bad. It's the institutions themselves. When you give a group of people a monopoly by law where they don't have competition to challenge what they say, to challenge their methods, to challenge their prescriptions, to challenge their directions, when they don't have any competitive pressure, they have no ability to self-correct. They have no ability to make calculations that engage with their own risk rather than just mitigating the risk of being perceived to be the problem. See, when a business kills people because of bad products, the CEO gets fired, there's lawsuits unless the government shelters them with their fake regulations and fake agencies. But in a normal market situation, if a business harms you, there's results, there's repercussions. You fire the business. The media will do their best to shame that business if it's not a business that pays for their mouthpiece. But then in a government, what happens? You just blame whatever party you hate, right? You say, oh, well, government made a mess of this food pyramid. Well, it was the Democrats' fault. Or no, it was the Republicans' fault. Or the government really blundered the Iraq war. Oh, it was Bush's fault. It wasn't the actual institution of perpetual war and the Pentagon and the wasteful spending. That's not the blame. It's always misdirected to whatever scapegoat is in office at that time who has majority power. Meanwhile, nothing changes, does it? Well, things are changing, right? Slowly but surely, we're taking our freedom back. We're going to bring our troops home. We're not going to be doing perpetual war. That's going to come to an end. It can't continue to sustain itself. And where the efforts of coercion and these silly, pitiful little mayors that want to lock people up if they don't have a mask on, and they want to have a curfew, you got to go night at 6 o'clock or something like that. Like it's, I don't know, what's the time? What is like Bert and Ernie? Is that it's like Sesame Street? All right, time to go to bed at 5 or what? Well, they like that because whatever their issue is, maybe they were picked on in school, maybe they're jealous of other people, maybe they want attention, and they get a little monopoly perch like a little government, and then they want to inflict power. Oh, look at me. Look how strong I am. Look how quick I am to punish people with threats if they dare to do anything different from my infinite wisdom, which is always backed by special interests. They don't tell you that because they're liars. But they don't know what they're doing, right? We always go back to that. Forgive them, Father, for they don't know what they're doing. But we increasingly do know what we're doing, and we have an obligation to tell the truth with that in mind. A neighbor's choice is not going to let off of this issue. We need to deal with the real health crisis in this country. And one of the primary health crises that we have is the fake single-payer nutrition and its false information about what is a proper human diet. Proper human diet should be founded primarily on animal-based foods. That's what we ate for tens of thousands of years. That's what our genetics are designed for, to thrive optimally for. We're not supposed to be smothering ourselves with vegetable oil. We're not supposed to be eating massive amounts of carbohydrates and hybridized bananas that have way too much sugar than their natural form. That's not the way we were supposed to eat. And because we were misinformed by stupid bureaucracies and their fake quackery that pushed by big food companies, big soy, big wheat, big sugar, because we are misinformed, we've got millions of people with massive chronic illnesses, and we can heal them. We can turn them around. We can turn this whole thing around. But you're going to have courage. You're going to have to roll up your sleeve and solve problems yourselves. Don't blame politicians. Look, I've just exposed to you how awful their policies are. But we can't focus on them. That's just the problem. Now we got to focus on the solution. And the solution lies in your hands. The solution is freedom. The solution is courage and self-sacrifice and loving your neighbor as yourself. And loving your neighbor means you got to love yourself first. That means you can't hate yourself and eat Fritos and frozen pizzas. It means you got to do the things proper. Get sunshine. Read some books. Strengthen your mind. Hug a friend. It's your God-given right to do that. And the fear, folks, they just kind of fade out, don't they? They just fade away. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.
Your local sports station.